Hello and welcome to another SKTLs Volunteer Team Weekly Wednesday 4 p.m. Eastern call. We are Cabana-less today. Our usual host did not show. He did create the links and set this all up, and maybe there was a note on Slack where he said he wasn't going to be here, but we'll pull it off without him. I think we can do this.
It'll be tough.
Dan Geraci, CEO Free Fall Space, as it says right there. Joe Anderson. We need to officially put, like, Joe, next time you log in here, instead of just putting Joe Anderson, and you say,
I'll put
Joe
the appropriate.
Anderson,
badass.
I just won't even put my name. I'll just
just put American Badass. Yeah.
I can be nameless.
Yeah, badass for short.
Yeah. Sanati. I like how I think Cabana does a great introduction of Sanasi every week, where he says he is the most humble, smartest guy you'll ever be around.
Yeah, the smartest humble guy you'll ever be around. That's right.
So, hello, Sanati, former chief scientist at a giant telecom company, now SKTLs volunteer extraordinaire. And I'm Cody Willard, hedge fund manager, publisher of Trading with Cody, former TV anchor, used to be Almost Famous. Now I'm nobody. Started making Bryson. You guys ever seen Chef Reactions? Anybody know Chef Reactions? It's a thing on Twitter. Probably on TikTok and stuff too, but I see it on Twitter. This chef, world-renowned chef, watches like most of the time it's like bad tutorials on how to make. Like last week, he showed this video of a woman at home making tortillas lined with McDonald's French fries and then chicken nuggets and then more tortillas on top and then frozen Mickey Mouse nuggets and then cheese on top of that. And then she baked it and it looked absolutely awful. And the guy, he was like 0 out of 10, but I'd admit I'd probably take a bite. It's very funny. Anyway, Bryce and I have been thinking about making these videos about like finance reactions, Wall Street guy reactions, and we make fun of video. I forgot where I was going with all of this. But anyway, we've been making videos all day, and not all day. We spent an hour trying to make a video. It's a lot harder than it looks. All right, crypto, space news. What do we got here?
Well, there's all kinds of stuff going on. There's some companies raising money. There's one thing I'll mention that people might find interesting. We always talk about low Earth orbit, LEO, and of course, MEO and GEO, but we don't really talk about VLEO, very low Earth orbit. And this is the upper atmosphere, right on the edge, maybe 150 to 250 miles up. But VLEO is becoming a big thing, bigger, because if you think about it, it's very close, right? It's the closest to the Earth. It takes less fuel and resources to get there. Because you're closer, it takes less time for transmissions. And because you're closer, you can have much higher resolution on the imagery. And so
that's just milliseconds faster, right? But it is faster. I mean, we've talked about that kind of stuff before, right?
Right. But it is faster. But one of the most important things, it's a less costly orbit to be in. And from every aspect. And there are a number of companies now that are pursuing this very aggressively. There are good articles in Space News about it. Today, there's a company called Albedo who just raised $35 million, who's focused on building a constellation. There's another company called Viridian, with a V as in Victor, Viridian. They're a little bit further behind, but they're doing the same thing. And the implications for surveillance, things of that nature, if you look at the Space News article, today you'll see a big image at the beginning of the article where the resolution that they're expecting is for 1 pixel on an image 10 centimeters, in other words 4 inches per pixel. That's the resolution.
And what,
Okay.
Dan, give us some order of magnitude, like what's a Black Sky or a Spire or a Maxim?
I think a lot of them are, well, the declassified stuff is going to be, from their orbits higher up. They can get down to inches. The classified stuff is even higher resolution. We normally will see things several years after we've moved past it in the military establishment. So, we get stuff after they're well beyond it. So it's safe to put it out there. So now we're going to see from that orbit for for objects, you'll see a 4-inch resolution from that orbit, which, there's nothing you can't see at that point. I mean, they're able to tell you if there's I think in this image on the article, there's a gas furnace of some type operating. They can see that from the readings they're getting, looking at it's pretty cool stuff. So
Dan, you can send something to low, what did you call it? Very VLEO.
VLEO.
So very low Earth orbit, and does it 17,000 miles per hour to stay in orbit? Like, is there a difference
yes, there is.
Faster to stay in orbit, I would assume.
It's the problem with VLEO is that because you're right at that upper edge, there is buffeting from the upper atmosphere. So you're not in pure space where there's nothing around. You're skipping along the top of the atmosphere. So spacecraft, satellites, antennas have to be designed to withstand that kind of buffeting. So the aerodynamics of the spacecraft, the aerodynamics of an antenna or anything hanging off of a satellite, all have to be managed to a much different profile for that. So you still need 17.5 to stay in orbit. But in this orbit, in terms of speed, now you've got other things to deal with, maintaining stability, dealing with upper atmosphere issues, things of that nature. But it's all manageable. So it's not like this is harder than anything else we're doing. It's just different. But the benefits of it are tremendous.
Is it easier to get to VLEO versus LEO?
Yeah, because it's closer. So we think about the expense of moving a satellite to GEO and how expensive that is to get way out there, or to MEO, et cetera, or to upper LEO. So this is the shortest ride. This is the shortest ride.
So an airplane flies at 50,000,
40,000,
40,000.
35 to 40.
The hot air balloon that guy jumped out of in Roswell 10 years ago. Remember when that guy went to very low Earth orbit?
Was he at the Kármán line? I think.
I'm not sure he went quite that high. I think he was maybe 100,000 foot.
Because that's 62 miles to Kármán line. Yeah.
So 62. And so where is VLEO? How many miles up is it from here?
It's between 100 and 450 kilometers. So, you're looking at
we're in America, Dan.
200 miles.
We don't use the metric system, bro. That's not helpful at all.
100 to 200 miles. Just think of 100 miles, 150 miles up. But 300 kilometers is 180 miles.
Dan, would the Chinese then and Russia and other countries, the EU, Australia, everyone would also want satellites in VLEO?
There's an article, a related article, when you go to this article, and I'll post it for everybody on Slack. China is now going to start putting constellations. So it's about speed. So if I can see what you're doing as a bad actor faster with greater resolution, I have better knowledge. I have better information to act on. So this is one of those table stakes topics. One country starts building constellations in VLEO, everybody's going to be in VLEO. So we're going to see this rapid acceleration of development of these orbits.
And it'll be constellations, 5,000, 10,000 satellite constellations like Starlink is doing in LEO?
Well, for some things, it would be, because the closer you get to the Earth, the more satellites you need for coverage. So that's why there are thousands and thousands of Starlinks, because LEO is so close to the Earth that you need thousands of them to get the coverage. If you're way out at MEO, Middle Earth orbit, okay, you only need 6. If you go all the way out to geosynchronous orbit, you only need 3.
And to walk that analogy through a little bit, like you picture if you're on ground level and you look around, you can only see a certain amount. You go up to the top of a high rise, you can see for miles and miles, and you go to the top of a mountain and you can see for hundreds of miles.
Well, the way I explain LEO versus the others is, go stand up against a wall with your nose right up against the wall. How much of the wall can you see from there? Very little.
Yeah.
Right? Back up, you can see more. Keep backing up, you can see more. Go out to geostationary orbit, which is 22,000 miles out from the surface of the Earth. You only need 3 satellites out there to cover the entire planet. Okay, from 22,000 miles away, about 10% of the distance to the moon.
Dan, the whole purpose of SKTLs is to clean up space debris, fight the space debris problem. So now, are we going to have a space debris problem in VLEO when one of those satellites collides with another at some point? Or are they low enough and close enough to Earth that gravity is going to be pulling them unless they keep? What will the debris problem be like in VLEO? Walk us out to the most extreme example. 50 years from now, 40 years from now.
Well, no, you could still have things busting up. The only advantage in being decommissioned or failing, the only difference is in VLEO, there's a much shorter period of time before that orbit can degrade. It hits the atmosphere and burns up on the way in. And so one of the things you're going to see for VLEO satellites will be the fact that they're going to be considered relatively disposable, or the new term that's very hot now in the military when they're looking for hardware now for space. The big term now is attritable. They want attritable technology. So if it's no good, fine, we just drop another one in and replace it. That's the whole, CubeSat mindset anyway, is they're throwaway satellites. We can just keep replacing them if an adversary is knocking them out. So the more you have, the more your adversary has to keep track of. And that's one of the basics from a military standpoint is, hey, do they know how many satellites we have? Do they know how many satellites are doing what? Do they know, so you could say, oh, we have X number up there. Maybe half of them are actually doing something. Maybe all of them are. Maybe the numbers are wrong. We're going to see an environment where we're going to get a lot of partial information for VLEO in the beginning. It's more of a novelty. But at the end of the day, it's going to be no different than LEO. It's going to be full of stuff. I don't know that there'll be as many, just because it's a relatively smaller, narrower orbit band to put stuff into, and some of the risks don't really benefit the operators for being that low. LEO will still be preferred for most of the communications, but for Earth observation, taking pictures, tracking stuff, seeing what's going on the ground, VLEO is the best place, other than flying over it in an airplane, to get the images. This is kind of like take the spy planes of the 60s and the 70s, and now just put them on steroids and put them up a little bit higher. That's all.
Yeah. Now, how big will it be? Mostly CubeSats, mini-sats, microsats?
No, they'll be small sats, so they'll be bigger.
Oh,
We don't know how big. A small sat's bigger than a CubeSat, but a small sat's probably gonna. These could be 300, 400, 500 pound satellites, something in that range, maybe
how
bigger.
big? How much does it? How big is a CubeSat typically?
Shoebox, 2 shoeboxes, 3 shoeboxes.
Okay. Joe,
Not
Sanat,
not
you guys have
not big at
questions
all.
for Dan?
Not big at all.
You guys have questions for Dan while we're on this topic?
I just thought I'd bring it up because I think you'll find it interesting to
I
focus
do,
on.
absolutely. And also just from a debris standpoint, it's yet another, you fast forward again 20, 30, 40 years when theoretically we're going to have people going back and forth to Mars and the moon on a daily, weekly, monthly basis of something. And suddenly there's yet more debris. There's yet another potential debris field between you and the moon. You got a VLEO debris field. You got a LEO debris field. I don't think we'll have a MEO debris field, but who the hell knows?
Well, you're going to have debris. Humans are good at making a
Creating
mess everywhere we go. Yeah. So I think you're going to have debris. I think to the extent that countries take the responsibility of cleaning up after themselves, that'll be the differentiator going forward. Because I don't see everybody signing an agreement that anybody's going to stick to. I call me pessimistic, but I don't see some countries signing on. It's going to be at a disadvantage to those who signed on. Frankly,
Dan's pessimistic. Dan's pessimistic.
Yay!
This is fascinating. The what you mentioned as throwaway satellites.
Yeah.
That by definition that means, right, more garbage.
Yes.
Whether you like it or not.
It's exactly right. So someone knocks out 27 CubeSats from a constellation. Somebody goes in there, bangs into them, blows up their own satellite, does whatever. Now what do? Well, you got this hole in your net that you have to stitch up pretty quick. And so there would be other satellites in orbit, stored, sitting there, quiet, waiting for instructions to light up and move in to fill a hole. That's what the strategy is quickly replace where they get knocked out. So you could do that from stuff sitting up there, or you can do
that gets into your manufacturing piece. Then you could have storage facilities up there that are manufacturing and storing, and they can drop them down into
eventually there'll be manufacturing, right? Orbital manufacturing will start doing that, but for now they'll be launched on a Falcon or something, and some of them will just go into a storage container if they're not in one already, just some tube, and they could be kept there, and when it's time to put them into position, then they could be either moved over with an orbital transfer vehicle, or if they have enough fuel on board and they're positioned properly, they could putt over to where they need to be, flip the switch, and fill the hole.
Did anybody want to guess what the first? Oh, you have one more thing on that, Sanatzi?
No, you finish.
I was changing topics.
Oh, okay. So the software stack on these satellites. So since they are throwaway, if there's a need, basically to update the software on these things, how I don't know how easy it's going to be. You would think that it would be easier, but I have no idea.
It's getting easier because now what they're doing is making everything, portable, if you will, to where they can just say, okay, update the software. We can send up a fix, if you will. So the new stuff is being designed so that the hardware can just be upgraded. The software can be upgraded constantly, and the hardware is going to be fine. The notion of, big satellites, they're still going to be the same. They're going to have a life. They're going to have issues. But a big part of the orbital services marketplace that's developing, that Space Force is pushing for manufacturing and servicing in orbit, part of that will be to upgrade satellites that can't be upgraded other than physically, where they can put what they're basically calling a backpack type of a device that they could attach to an existing satellite to increase its capabilities, give it new capabilities, give it eyes. That's one of the big things, is putting cameras on these satellites so that we could see what's going on around them. We never thought we had to do that before. Now it's crowded. We want to see who's flying by and doing bad things. So there's going to be, just think of it as a complete rebuild of our communications infrastructure off the planet, because that's what's happening. They're rebuilding everything. It's crazy.
This is like the Tesla, if there's a basically patch that they need to deploy to every Tesla car. So Cody might know more about this since he owns, Tesla. So does Elon really use satellites basically to deploy the patches?
Not necessarily, like when at my house, I am a Starlink customer, so I am using his satellites to download the patch when it comes to my Tesla. But if you're on, you're just using your Wi-Fi most of the time.
Okay.
You to download. I also could take a patch update, a software update on my at my office, and at my office, I'm not a Starlink customer. I use a fiber optic connection, so you're connected to Wi-Fi when you download your update. So, would anybody want to guess what the first text message sent from a Starlink-enabled smartphone in the middle of nowhere that the T-Mobile Starlink new partnership?
Oh.
What was the first thing they said over the phone? Alexander Graham Bell.
Watson, is that you? No.
It is something like that.
Yeah, it was something like that. Or it wasn't, can you hear me now? I know that.
They wrote, as I just posted there, new phone, who dis?
Who dis?
That's some good stuff right there.
That's about right for today. Yep.
Yeah, that is really good. Let's hit on crypto real quick. Anybody else want to comment on space before we move to crypto commentary?
Quickly, the Piper is in Orlando, he said, so he's not going to be able to actually do anything until this coming weekend. But I already calculated the monthly rewards, and it will be by far the lowest rewards for us, and I'm not kidding, and I can tell you exactly. So it's 27 divided by 2, which will be 1,400. That is, I should say. It's that small because, first of all, not much activity, and whatever activity was there, it involved testing, actually, like North Korea testing ballistic missile, things like that. So no reward, for those.
Yeah.
The 21 satellites for direct to smartphones, we were just talking about, and other than that, really just 2 separate, one satellite, and then one separate 4 satellites. By far, the lowest.
Interestingly, though, this month, when you calculate it in a couple of weeks, will be one of the biggest, because we just sent 4 astronauts to the space station, and those are 10 times the size. You get 10 times the reward for one astronaut that you do a satellite. And there's been a lot of satellite launches this month too, and Rocket Lab is supposed to do one, I think, next week. Is that right, Dan? Do you know? But yeah, it'll be interesting. It is sort of interesting to watch the ebb and flow of the satellite, of what we call successful space actions, which are satellites getting to outer space or human beings getting above the Kármán line. So,
Yeah.
Crypto, obviously, we did have a sell-off after I think it was 1 week ago today that the ETFs were approved. They started trading last Thursday. Bryce, does that sound right? 2 weeks ago. 2 weeks ago. It's been 2 weeks. And man, time flies. We've been having so much fun. It's been interesting to see the sell the news reaction. I was trying to explain to my wife why there would be a sell the news reaction to the potential of billions of dollars being able to flow into crypto via Bitcoin ETFs. And as it's like anything where people buy the rumor in anticipation of that actual development. It's called, as Dan's nodding his head, he's probably heard this saying 10,000 times in his life. People typically buy the rumor and sell the news. And what happens is you buy all that in anticipation of other people finally coming in. Well, so those other people were doing the same thing that you were doing. The actual news comes along and people are like, hey, why didn't it go up 20%? Why is it down 5%? That's not what was supposed to happen. Get me out. And so you actually end up with more sellers the lower the price goes. Typically, you're supposed to bring out more sellers by raising prices, but Wall Street and crypto and trading in general works a lot of the time exactly opposite. There are buyers higher and sellers lower. And that's how you get these reinforcing bull markets or reinforcing bear markets. And that's how things cycle. And that's why we have cycles. And there is a limited amount of money to go into any particular asset. And there might not be any more buyers for a while until the stock. And then you can also have a capitulation of just exhaustion of selling. And so eventually, and that might have happened yesterday, Bitcoin has bounced 3 or 4% off the lows since yesterday. We'll have to see whether that's sustainable or not. But what would make that sustainable would be two things. The sellers exhausted themselves, those weak-handed people who were buying it in anticipation of the ETF popping the prices, give up, puke their whatever the asset is, in this point, in this example, Bitcoin, and eventually there's no more sellers, and that thing can start rising as people are looking. There's just nowhere. If you're trying to buy it, there's no one hitting your bid, and you end up having to start following the ask up. And then once again, we repeat the cycle in opposite direction. People buy as it goes higher. The momentum guys come in and start buying, and then it just becomes the opposite self-fulfilling prophecy. Comments, Dan or anyone else?
You nailed it. That's it.
Thank you so much.
And this is why, small investors, it's a very difficult thing to try to get out there and trade in the wilderness, because there are so many forces that you either don't know about or have no ability to counter, and you get taken along for the ride. So it's unfortunate, but
hey guys, sorry, I got to run. See you next week.
Joe, you didn't even contribute. Where are you going?
I'm sorry.
I'm breaking up with you,
summoned.
Joe. I'm breaking up with you.
Don't do it. Don't do it.
All
I'll be back next week.
I'll give you one more chance. We'll see you next week, bro. Thanks for being here.
All right, everybody, have a great week.
All right, peace, bro. All right,
as I was saying, Peter Lynch would say, the most important organ for investing is the stomach, not the brain. And
we like to say around here, you got to have cojones to be a hedge fund manager, and so you got to make bets. That's our job. So invest shouldn't be betting; it should be analysis and investing for the long run. So, but even that, anytime you're laying the money out, you're in some sense betting.
There's risk.
Higher prices. There is risk. Even if you put the money under your mattress, there's still risk that someone breaks in your house and steals it. And that wouldn't even be Goldman Sachs in that example. When you put your money in any brokerage account, Goldman Sachs is going to try to get it, but your next door neighbor might be trying to get it from underneath your mattress. All right, guys, let's get out of here. I'm going to go listen to the Tesla call.
Okay, one sec. So I don't know if you guys, sorry, Cody. I don't know if you know the amount of money that actually governments or private organizations pay for astronauts to go to the space station, dock at the space station, and do experiments or learn things. I just found out. So there was a Turkish astronaut along with someone from Sweden. So on January 18th, I believe, they went up to the space station. Turkish government paid $55 million. Seriously, like, for one astronaut. And so there was, I read the news, there was a really outrage that they're paying this much money.
That seems like a hell of a bargain. $55 million. What Dan, what did the Dylan guy and all those Shift 4 guys, they pay? How much did they pay to go on the Blue Origin that didn't even get them to space? What didn't they pay, like $5 million each or something?
There's all kinds of rumors about 18 million typically, stuff like that. It was just ridiculous. But I mean, don't forget, in the early days, when we had the shuttle flying, I mean, Soyuz was costing us back then, I want to say 25 or 30 million a seat. And then when the shuttle stopped flying, Russia doubled or tripled the price to bring astronauts up. And it was north of 50 for sure.
Which inflation adjusted would be about 200 million right now.
Well, it's a lot of money. No kidding. But what they don't tell you is, there's, and I don't know what the dollar amount is, but it's, it's a couple of $1 million when you factor everything in to get an astronaut trained. Now, how much training was done, who knows? But most of the astronaut training happens in Houston, and it's very intensive. The flights like, Blue Origin and everything, I mean, that's just, take an airplane for 15 minutes and go home. I mean, there's no depressurization. There's none of that stuff. Those aren't real astronauts, but don't tell anybody I said that. But
hey, but to give it some perspective, let me check my own commentary there, Sanatsi, that I just Googled. Do you know what the GDP of Turkey is?
I don't, honestly.
$900 million. So they spent 5% of their GDP to get one person to the internet. You know what? By that perspective, that's a lot. That's a lot. That would be the equivalent of spending $6 trillion. No, we're 30 trillion divided by 3. So it would be the equivalent of
a lot.
$1.5 trillion to spend that the United States would spend to get an astronaut to the International Space Station if it were 5% of our GDP. Yeah, I could see people in Turkey being pissed that you've got kids who are hungry, kids who need health care. You got people who have cancer that don't have the money to pay for treatments. And we're going to spend $55 million sending someone to the International Space Station to do some tests for a few weeks.
So let me give you another perspective so that we can understand how actually it hits home. So $55 million is like the monthly salary of 220,000 retirees.
Yeah,
so we're talking about.
I could see there being outrage in Turkey over that.
Yeah, sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
But you have this dichotomy of all these countries that so desperately want to be spacefaring nations, and they see this as a way to lift the country up, and to bring in jobs and technology and new companies. But to Sanatsi's point, good luck convincing the people today that this is going to bear benefits 5 or 10 or 20 years from now, because they're sitting there saying, hey, I'm worried about today. I'm not worried about 20 years from now. That's
right. Yeah.
Well,
if you're hungry, you'd rather the government help you eat than send someone to the International Space Station. Wow. Guys, I have got to go. Peace and love. Thank you for this week. I will see you all next week.
You got it.
Dan,
well.
thanks for all of that information. Sanati,
Be safe,
thank you
everybody.
for all that information and feedback, and I'll see you guys soon. Thanks,
Stay safe.
everybody, for watching.